In this video, we'll be talking about imbalances. So imbalance, also known as fair value gap, it refers to where the supply and demand are skewed, leading to an uneven distribution and subsequent impact on the price. And this can be caused by economic factors such as trade imbalances, capital flows, or changes in market sentiment. Now, how do we actually identify these fair value gaps? So you can actually identify FVGs when price shoot up rapidly, like we mentioned, causing neighboring candlesticks to not overlap. So in this diagram over here, you can see that it's a bearish momentum, and you can see that there's a lot of volume, and the candle in the middle, there's a gap or imbalance from the first candle and the second candle. And why it's important is because it can act as a magnet or target for your price. Price tend to want to balance itself, so you will often see price returning to the gap to fill the gap, represented with this diagram. So you can see the imbalance was created. The price did go down a little bit, but price needs to rebalance itself. So you see the drop, and then the price went up to fill the value gap, and from there the price can drop further. Now, trading the FVGs, you can see an example over here. So FVG was created, and then we have the price going to the FVG, and we can simply take an entry off the FVG if there's a change of character and we see that the momentum is shifting from bearish to bullish, and then that will give us an idea of where to enter off the FVG. So here's another example of FVG that's created. The price did in fact head up to rebalance itself off the fair value gap, and you can see that the price did go down to the demand zone, pick up liquidity to shoot up. So basically acting like a magnet, telling you where price is going to go. And when we actually stack order blocks and fair value gaps, that becomes really powerful, and we'll talk about that in our future videos. So just by going to my browser over here, you can actually learn to spot these FVGs very easily because it's just a price imbalance. It's always a good practice to spotting fair value gaps, order blocks, and in this chart right here, we can easily see there's imbalance over here, right? And what did price do? After it shot up, it built liquidity, and then there's a sweep to fill this imbalance over here, right? It filled it perfectly over here, right? Even though price shot up, and then we can see the imbalance over here. So if we zoom in this area, we can see that there's an imbalance. So what price did, it shot up and came back to the imbalance and then moved higher. Here's another example, perfect example over here. You see there's a fair value gap on this candle, and then the price went up, came down to the fair value gap, tapped it, and then went up. Sometimes it doesn't fill all the way. Sometimes it will fill only 50% of the way, but it's always good to see it, right? So it went up right here. It just tapped it, but it almost tapped 50% of this candle and then went up. So that would have been your entry over here, because you know that it's bullish momentum, and then it's coming down to the fair value gap, and it didn't break structure, right? So it created a market structure here, and then it still went higher and higher, creating a higher high. Here's a fair value gap created, a demand block created over here. So the price went out, and then what did price do? Come back to rebalance itself right here. And again, this fair value gap, supply order block, this makes it a super order block over here. So as the price went down, it came back, went into fair value gap more than 50%, and then took liquidity to go down. So that is fair value gap. It's very important to spot these fair value gaps and understand where price may go. It doesn't always tend to fill, but most of the time it does, giving you a direction, kind of like a magnet on where price action will be heading. So it's really important to know. And also the previous video when we talk about supply and demand order blocks, that's also very important as well. When you pair it together, it basically a super order block, in my opinion, that gives you a higher probability on the best entries for your trade. All right, so go ahead, go onto your chart, spot these order blocks, get used to them, and I'll see you in the next one.